I allow. Oof. Again, this idea, if we're looking at there's only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, the all-loving goodness of God, I think the question is, do we allow that? And this song is a perfect, it's a perfect and beautiful way to kind of keep that motion in our heart and in our mind that we do allow, and we ask it. We say our invocation, and sometimes we just say it with words, but today I'm hoping that we kind of bring this invocation as a more affirmative prayer in our hearts, especially at this time of the year, and allow it to speak and move and activate us in ways that our human sense and sensibility really doesn't do. Last week, Reverend Kitty talked about that this is the Advent season, this idea of reflection and preparation, a time before Christmas. We recognize it as the birth of Christ, or we say it's, the birth of Christ consciousness. And we're also understanding that it's not just happening at this time of the year. It's an opportunity for a collective consciousness of people to kind of tune in and remember who we are, and remember that we have this Christ quality within us, and we have opportunities to release it and to practice it too. Kitty, excuse me, one of the things she did so beautifully last week was she introduced, she went point by point through the peace prayer of St. Francis. And such a beautiful way to kind of think again about preparing us for this season. The idea again, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, let me sow pardon. And on it went. And it was again, I love poetry because, it's not like a logical thing in our brain. Poetry really kind of does speak in our heart, and it does activate something in us. And that's exactly what this prayer does. And Reverend Kitty brought this together with how we can use practical Christianity, which is what unity is. Practical Christianity. It's practicing this in all our affairs, practicing and calling forth our Christ nature. That our thoughts, words, and actions have consequences, and that we sow seeds of thoughts, words, and deeds. And again, she made the point when she talked about, and I thought this was so important, especially in this climate when it feels like there's so much upheaval everywhere. This idea of injury and pardon, and I like that she reminded us, if you make a person working against you a power, you're creating a false self, you're creating a false power. And that's that kind of dual thinking. That's the idea we get away from that prayer, that sense there is only one power and one presence. So it's that idea of kind of just stepping back a degree or so in the midst of chaos and conflict, and right in the midst. Not that we're ignoring it necessarily, but our human sense is just kind of receding enough for the Christ nature to come through. And then suddenly we're acting or not acting according to Spirit's will, Spirit's desire. So it's enough to just see the other person's Christ nature behind whatever's presenting to you, your own at the same way. And I think that's why prayer and meditation, why we talk so much about it, is it's never an act of human will. The only human will is the choice to see it and step back a little bit. Like that's the only human will in this. The rest is the Christ nature coming through. I was just reminded, like in Romans 8:6, they say to be carnally minded, carnally human, the flesh mind is really death. But to be spiritually minded is life and peace. So again, those are kind of just words, but if it sits in the heart, it will speak to us and it will move us in a different way. So again, it's how do we allow this Christ nature, this higher sense of self, our spirit being, to be activated and come forth? What is it in our human consciousness versus a spiritual consciousness that seems to be There seems to be a chasm or a divide in this field, but we know there really isn't. So I like how Unity Minister Eric Butterworth asks us about this, and up here on the screen, he talks about, this is what he says, God is centered in you. God is centered in you always. Here it is. The question is, what is your consciousness centered in? If your thought is centered in materiality, if it's centered in difficulties, if it's centered in the news of the day, it's centered in an idea, oh my, everything happens to me, then this is going to frustrate the whole flow. God is centered in you. The kingdom of all potentiality is already within you. Positive faith is the key to the kingdom. And this is it right here. You don't need to become something different in order to release your imprisoned splendor. Yeah, amen. I love that, you guys, right? And I love the words this is our poets, our musicians, you guys. A poet it was Robert Browning actually who used this word, release your imprisoned splendor. So another way to say this is the Advent season, the Christ in you. It's this idea of releasing your imprisoned splendor, this higher nature. And I love, why is it imprisoned? That's what we want to think. And Eric Butterworth is thinking, well, where is your consciousness centered, right? Actually, Robert Browning, the poet, one of my favorite, this is my favorite poem. The one is Truth is Within. And he basically says, truth abides in fullness, and wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in. There's this perfect, clear perception, which is truth, but a baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all error. But guess what? To know consists in opening out a way whence your imprisoned splendor is released. Not looking for something out. He says not rather than an entry without, but looking within and releasing your inner splendor. I would download that poem and just recite it every day. It's such a, again, it by saying it moves something in our spirit. It speaks to the spirit. The other thing in here, it sort of gets to the sense of, okay, I know how to do this. This makes sense. We're not talking about anything new when we say this. But the question still comes, how? Like, how do I let it? I can be aware of my conscious. I know prayer and meditation can shift. I know one conscious God breath can shift everything. Just that, I like that God is, I am, just quietly in my heart will shift something automatically. And Joel Goldsmith, he says the same thing. Remember, you already have all that the Father has, and therefore you're infinite. You are infinite, and no good can come to you. No good can come to you. Why? Because it's already in us, right? It's in us, and we can let it out, but we're not looking for it to come to us. That's why that idea of sowing injury, to sow pardon and injury is so beautiful, because I'm looking at, when insults or injury seems to be coming, I don't have, that's not a power, and I don't rely on someone else's to be or feel my goodness. So Joel Goldsmith suggests something that's real simple. And he says, so in order to release your imprisoned splendor, the idea is meditate until you feel a consciousness of God's presence. And I want to say, I'm a big contemplative meditator for years. I've been in contemplative prayer. It was very difficult for me in the beginning to meditate, to sit for 30 seconds. It was difficult to sit for 5. Now, I have no problem sitting for a length of time. But sometimes I can't even sit because there's so much going on in my mind and my angers or my resentments or fears. I can't force myself to sit and meditate, even as a practiced contemplative prayer practitioner for many years. So here's what I would say. I know you guys are with me on this. I know you can find times where you can sit, and other times, or probably most times, especially it seems at this time, to even sit quietly for a minute, please believe me and trust and know you can you can meditate and pray every moment of every day with one conscious God breath is a meditation, and it's so powerful. So meditate till you feel the conscious presence of God. I mean, take the God breath in any moment and just you choose your words. I mean, we talk about this at Unity all the time. Love, peace, joy, whatever the word is in the moment that you need that represents a aspect of God, grab it and put it in that breath. Peace. That's a meditation. It starts something right there. And so meditate, then declare this realization of Christ is dispelling material sense. And again, you can say we're coming into this Advent season, this Christmas, this idea that Christ is being birthed in us, which simply means just wide open consciousness of awareness of it. That's what the birth is. But it's happening all the time. We're always rebirthing Christ in ourselves. Again, it's this time it's joyful because there's a collective energy of people consciously focusing this way. So if this realization of Christ or this realization of my inner splendor is dispelling material sense. So this realization of my inner splendor is dispelling whatever's going on out here or whatever I'm engaged in the moment. It's dissipating it. It's just dissolving it right there. And then, you'll feel something new. Something will move. And then again, the other suggestion is when you retain this realization of the Christ or your inner splendor, just say that this realization of the Christ or this inner splendor is opening human consciousness to the receptivity of truth. Oh, wow. That's so joyful. Why do I even want to release my inner splendor? What is it all of my Christ nature? Oh, it's right there. It opens human consciousness to this receptivity of all of their inner splendor. So beautiful. And Eric Butterworth, I'm going to go up on the next slide with Eric Butterworth, Christina. Thank you, Christina. She's a gem trying to follow me today. He kind of puts this all together, what we were just talking about in this way. He says, your need is simply to get your consciousness centered in God, again, centered in your inner splendor, centered in the realization that the whole universe believes in you. The whole universe is flowing into you and through you. Your need is to accept it and let it happen. Remember the song, I Allow? Let it. I allow it. To let it happen and to let yourself be directed out of that consciousness in a faith-believing attitude. So again, there's the human choice, is having the attitude, right? This Advent season, may we come to know that God believes in us, you and me. May we awaken to know the Christ child that is eternally being birthed in us, our imprisoned splendor, our hope of glory. And I love that word hope too, because that's the other part of this when we say, how do we do it? How does it happen? I also think that in the midst of things, it's the hope, the idea that there's only one power and one presence, and just the hope that fills me with right then, and acts of kindness and love in the midst of things fill me with hope. So again, it's just centering on our prayer affirmation. So would you say it with me? I'm going to keep saying it, but I'd like to hear it back. There is only one presence and one power in the universe. My life, the all-loving goodness of God. Yeah. See, that ignites a feeling of hope, just saying that. The possibility is endless when I just imbibe in that, And there's this idea, like, again, what do we do about life's challenges and obstacles? Again, you don't ignore them. It's hope. It's go to that prayer first of all, because that's what will open and give you answers or peace or just presence in it, and delight in watching it change itself. Like, you're not even doing anything. It's because you become an open field to bear witness to the changes of things. And again, that's the Romans 12:2 is one of my favorite. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good, acceptable, and perfect, the will of God. Like, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's this. That's how we release the imprisoned splendor. There's only one presence and one power. That's transforming my mind every time I come up against an obstacle. Reverend Kitty mentioned this booklet, A Christmas of Light and Peace. And if you don't have one, they're still out in the front room, so go pick it up. And to our friends online, I believe you can get to it through the calendar. Parker's nodding yes, calendar. And also, or you can go to unity.org and just go to the shop button or store button, and you can get it there too. And what's nice for people online, you can just get the downloaded transcript, so you don't have to wait for the book to come, which is so nice to have it right away. And so there was a couple things in here that I just wanted to share that I think is just so lovely. And by the way, Tuesday night, for the next couple Tuesdays, we're meeting online to discuss releasing our inner splendor and the light and peace of the Christmas season. So join us online for that. A couple people in here inspired me, and one was Reverend, I'm not sure how to say the name, it's Saba McHung, I'm not sure, the name will be up here, but the Reverend writes about bold hope, and here's what she says up here on the screen about bold hope. During this season of Advent, let's consider developing a new type of response to life's challenges and obstacles, a way that doesn't involve anger or frustration, fear, worry, or resignation to what seems inevitable. The answer, I believe, is to develop a feeling of bold hope. Bold hope, there's only one presence and one power. This is the attitude that says, regardless of how bad the situation seems, and regardless of how many obstacles are in my path, I'm still going to boldly believe that my good will manifest. I'm going to boldly believe there's only one power and one presence. Oh, goodness of God. It's an attitude that admits you may not have a clue as to what the answer is, but you still have hope that your situation can be turned around. Hope is not faith, but it is a very necessary starting point. So it's not naive either. I like that. It is a way of saying that you believe it's possible for you to overcome challenges and experience a better life. That's great for this season. And then I'm going to share what Reverend Jim Blake, who's the CEO of Unity World Headquarters, and actually wrote the kind of introductory piece to the booklet about hope for this season up here on the screen. He says, maybe hope sparks the gentle and generous warmth of the season within us each year. Maybe hope fuels our generosity and our seasonal compassion for our human family. Is it possible that the same hope sparks our thoughts, words, and actions in such a way that the optimism of the holidays spills forth from each of us into wonderful acts of kindness and love? I submit that at the very least, hope must be a contributing factor. What I am so love and so impassioned about this idea of hope, bringing this all together with this idea is there's only one presence and one power. The Christ's nature is eternally birthed in us. And I love this idea that in the midst of things, our thoughts, words, and actions are optimisms, wonderful acts of kindness and love. And I just wanted to share, I don't know if you guys, you probably are aware that the World Cup is going on, and that's, in America, we call it soccer. It's called football on the grander field. It's the 2022 World Cup. It's a huge event. It's in Qatar. It's in the Middle East, and there's been a lot of controversy about getting it there. I think it's the first time the World Cup has gone to the Middle East. There's been a lot of, as you can guess, politics, economics, social things. But the thing that's so impressive about it is over 200 countries participate in this sport. They said there's 3.5 billion fans worldwide, and they project that during the World Cup, 5 billion viewers. You guys, there's 8 billion people on the planet. So think about this, 5 billion, the collective energy is turned to this event. So we see spirit in everything. I think that this is what's so beautiful. This idea that there was one, just to set this up a little bit, there's been a lot of conflict, which I'm not going to go into, and rightly so. We need to look at things, but in the midst of what's happening, there was one of the American soccer players. He's the captain of the team. His name is Tyler Adams. He's the 23-year-old black man. And he was being interviewed by the press, and they were, like the press can be, kind of antagonistic at times, but sometimes necessary. But there was one, I have to say this right, I'm conscious of it now, Iranian journalist who peppered Adams with questions about American foreign policy and social issues, and he rebuked Adams for pronouncing his country wrong, because Adams was pronouncing it as Iran, right? And it's Iran. No, it's Iran, not Iran. Even I say Iran, and I'm a geography major. but this is the thing, you guys, this hope, this idea of how these acts of kindness and love get spread. Here's how this young man responded in this interview. My apologies on the mispronunciation of your country. And then he's responding to this. The guy also, the reporter also asked, he asked about the dissent. What did he say? And are you okay representing a country that has so much discrimination against black people in its own borders? That's what this reporter asked him. And this is what this 23-year-old black man responded. My apologies for mispronunciation of your country. There's discrimination everywhere you go. One thing I have learned, especially from living abroad in the past years and having to fit into different cultures, is that in the U.S., we are continuing to make progress every day. Do you love that? Not saying there isn't a problem, not saying, oh, it's all terrible, we need to burn it down. Hey, we're making progress every day, right? And he says, obviously, it takes time to understand and thorough education. I think it's super important. He uses the word education, but I think that's what we're talking about here. I think this idea of, renewing our mind and being present to things and being open in our hearts to things that need to change. So he's saying, and he continues, he says, this is what he said to the reporter, like you just educated me now on the pronunciation of your country. Yeah, it's a process. I think as long as you see progress, that's the most important thing. Isn't it so beautiful? I want to stay, you're going to be amazed. I want to stay with this young team because I think this is a dot in the reflection of all the great good that's going on. We're seeing a lot of problems and dissension and uprising, which is good, but we have to hold that there's a greater field of love and the inner splendor being released here. There was a story, this one really grabbed me, of the team players. Okay, so the U.S. team played Iran, and they beat Iran. And it's very, because of the politics and stuff, in the country of Iran, there's let's just say, a lot of pressure on those young players. And we've had a history with Iran politically since the 1970s of a lot of things going on. So you're seeing kind of this, and ramped up in the media was all this kind of pointing these two teams against each other. So the U.S. beats the team. Now I want to read what a journalist wrote, and I also would like Christina to put the slide of the pictures up of the players. Thank you, Christina. This is what one journalist wrote. He says, Saeed, and I'm not sure how to say his name, is it Tahali? I don't know if anyone knows. He's the Iranian player on the ground, number 6 there. He'd given everything, and this time it hadn't been enough. As a final whistle at the stadium signaled, there was nothing left for the defensive midfielder to do. So he sat down on the turf, deep in the Qatari night, buried his head in his hands, and let the tears tumble. Seconds later, do this without crying, he felt a big arm around his shoulder. It was Josh Sargent, the USA forward, who had dueled him during a first half, and the Americans desperately chased a goal until he won via Christian Pulisic. Sergeant kneeled next to Izatahali, hugged him, and offered him some words of kindness and sympathy. Soon, USA Brendan Aronson came, DeAndre Yedlin, and Tim Weha all joined to give this man comfort. And then can you put the slide up of what, thank you. And this is what Tim Wayhand said. He said, I think it's more important than just football. I think the United States and Iran have had so many issues politically, and I just wanted to show that we are all human beings and we all love each other. I just wanted to spread peace, love, and show him we come from different backgrounds. We grew up differently. He is still my family. He is still my brother, and I love him the same way as the guys I grew up with. And I want you to note that this art, it wasn't just these guys. The articles was about, like, a lot of this was going on the field, on the pitch, where these players were coming and consoling and the Iranian players. And one last thing, I'm going to show a slide of Timothy Weah also texted this later, thank you, with the team, when he said, I don't have that one on here, I'm going to have to read it. He says, always been more than just football to me, and I would just like to send my love to this wonderful team. They displayed so much pride and love for their country and for their people. Huge respect. It was an honor to share at the pitch with such greatness, such an inspiration. Again, I love this idea of these young 20-something-year-old men honoring culture and tradition and where people are coming from, and in this particular place at this time. Now, before we go into meditation, I'd also like to show a little video of one more incident on the field, and then we'll just go into meditation right after that. Okay, Parker? Let's just sit back, take in this beautiful imagery of what we just witnessed and what we just heard. One small event in one little corner of the world where peace and love and joy and acceptance and care and connection unfolded. It was an inner splendor within every spirit heart, those young men. As we feel that inner splendor, that peace, that way of being, we begin to know it, trust it, grow hope. We feel the presence of something bigger than just our finite self in a moment like this. We smile and engage with the finite. As we embrace the infinite allness, we embrace the bigger field because we are the bigger field. We allow Spirit we allow Christ's nature. We allow and release inner splendor. We know there is only one presence and one power in the universe and in our lives. We know only all loving goodness. We're aware and recognize a receding effect of consciousness, a dissipation or a release of the human dance, the human performance, the human will, that the Christ nature may come through. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, the all-loving goodness of God. I allow. I allow this presence and this power to rise in me, to rise in you. I behold the Christ in you. I behold the Christ in myself. I let hope bring it forth. There is only one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, the all-loving goodness of God. And so it is, and so I allow it to be. Amen.